So we are live, and today I have a special guest, Adam. Adam, I came across one of your videos, and I was mind blowing. It was related to stablecoin, and you called it a scam. And I'm very interested about to know about what is this scam. It's related to U.S. debts, and I think my viewers are just very much looking forward to what you have to say. Why do you call it a scam, and what is behind? Maybe if you can also introduce yourself, and then we jump directly into the topic.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's great to meet you. I'm Adam. I've been doing crypto for many years. I'm an economist by trade. I've done many things in my life, but I've run many businesses, but the most money I've made is probably in crypto. And I think crypto is the antithesis to a broken money system. Now, when we get into stable coins in and of themselves are not a scam, but they've been hijacked to manipulate what they could do. So let's go through the history of a stablecoin. A stablecoin was first created for crypto traders so they could move value from one exchange to another exchange without using a bank and without going to a centralized body. So the stablecoin was created and was a very useful tool. The stablecoin then evolved so people could buy and sell crypto and not have to go back to the dollar and not have to go back to banks. So step one, let's see if we can move value from this exchange to that exchange. Step two, now we can use that stablecoin to buy and sell from Bitcoin as an example into the dollar and then back into Bitcoin or Ethereum or altcoins without using a bank's dollar, but something that represents a dollar. And that was fantastic. Then Angelo, the stablecoin evolved further and evolved further and said, well, hang on a second, this stablecoin is so useful. I can actually use it on the free market if I want to pay you right now. If I'm in Australia and you're in Italy or anywhere in the world, I can send value from me to you without the volatility of a crypto, but with the versatility of a crypto. So we got the best of both worlds. No volatility that crypto has, but the versatility. And consequently, people were then texting each other money just as they texted each other messages or emails. And you had something pegged to a dollar, of course, and you could not use a bank. You didn't have to wait for 3 days for the Swift network. You didn't need permission. There was very low fees. There was no exchange rates, and it was fantastic. Then it went a step further, Angelo, and it went to the next step where it's like, well, hang on a second. If I'm in Venezuela, for example, or a country where the fiat currency is falling very quickly due to inflation, it's like, well, I want access to the US dollar, which is still a bad currency in the sense that all currencies, all fiats are losing their value. But instead of using as an example, the Venezuelan bolivar, which loses value immensely quickly, people could now use the US dollar in a stable coin with the utility and versatility and easy nature of an email or an SMS or a phone. So it evolved so quickly, and much of that evolution was not intended. Now what we can see is that the US government has said, okay, how can we take advantage of the stablecoin? Now, in the past, the stablecoin was backed by a dollar. That is, for every one stablecoin you had floating around the world, there was $1 backing it. But the US dollar, of course, is in a lot of trouble. The United States is in $37 trillion worth of debt, $37.5 trillion of debt, and that is increasing by about $1 trillion of debt every 100 days, and it's getting much quicker. Now, before I go on, I should make it clear that this is not a dig at the good American people. I've lived in America. I've served with Americans on operations. I've loved in America. I've studied in America. I've got a deep connection with America. A government and its people are two different things in any nation around the world. So America has got a very big problem. Left or right of politics, it doesn't matter if it was Trump, Biden, Harris, or Obama in the White House. Someone has to deal with $37.5 trillion worth of debt. And they don't have enough money to pay it back. That much money does not exist in the United States economy to pay it back. So what governments do to get rid of debt is that they inflate the money supply. And the best example I can give you is this. If there was $2 million in the world and $1 million of that was your debt, essentially 50% of the world's money supply is your debt. So $2 million in the world, $1 million is your debt in this example. So you've got 50% of the world's money supply that's your debt. So how do you get rid of that debt? How do you reduce the debt? Well, what you do is you inflate the money supply. So if I can inflate the money supply to $10 million, Before I had 50% of the world's debt, so I had $1 million debt, there's $2 million in the world, I've got 50% of the global supplies debt, if you will. My debt is 50% of the global money supply. If I inflate the money supply in this example to $10 million, well, my 50% of the global debt or the global money supply as a ratio to debt has now gone down to 10%. So it's still on paper, I still owe $1 million, but instead of that $1 million being 50% of the world supply, it's now 10% of the world supply. So to get rid of debt, not in a nominal amount, but a real amount, all governments, they inflate the money supply to reduce the ratio, if you will, the debt to GDP or the debt to global money supply ratio. So on paper, the nominal amount is the same, but the real amount goes down. Right, so where do we get this money that we print out of thin air? And stop me if I'm going too far or too fast.
I love it. I love it, Adam. This is I love the way you explain it, because we need to go to the foundation, and I think it's this whole process is very useful for my viewers.
I appreciate that, Angelo, because it is complicated, and we have not been taught money for a reason. In the world, we haven't been taught money because what I'm about to explain, and I'm sure what you know, but many of the viewers may not yet understand, is this is where money comes from. So we talk about inflating the money supply. So where does money come from? Well, in the olden days, you used to dig into the ground and gold would come out of the ground. That gold would take a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and that was called a hard money. Not hard because it was hard to touch, but primarily because it was hard to get and hard to increase. The history of money, of course, is in the olden days, for every ounce of gold or every dollar in circulation, there was an ounce of gold in the background. So in the very olden days, people used to buy and sell things with gold, but gold is heavy and slow. So they came up with a technology that said, well, hang on a second, if you put your gold in a central vault, the banker, or really the goldsmith, will write a note against that gold, and instead of walking around the streets with big heavy pieces of gold, I can now walk around with a banknote, and that banknote is light and versatile and divisible. But over time, what the goldsmiths found is no one's actually coming back for this gold. They trust the goldsmith, which later evolved into a bank. So what the goldsmith or the bank did is they wrote 2 notes against the same piece of gold, and then 3 notes against the same piece of gold, and 4 notes, and that's called a double spend. The goldsmiths were double spending the one piece of gold. Fast forward through history, all the way to 1971, and for many years we thought that the dollar, actually, we'll go back a little step. After the Second World War, the United States said after the Bretton Woods Convention, hey, world, everyone, instead of us dealing with this slow and heavy gold, and instead of us having all of these goldsmiths around the world, and instead of having all these different vaults of gold everywhere, how about you trust us? You trust us, the United States of America, and everyone gives your gold to us, America, and in return, we will give you the US dollar, a banknote called the US dollar. And everyone goes, yeah, but how do we know? And America said, no, you can trust us. We promise we won't double spend the gold. We promise that you can always redeem your gold for the US dollars that you give us. And we promise that we'll keep your gold safe. So the world bought this, and the world said, okay, we trust you, America. So many nations sent the majority of their gold to the United States. The gold was centralized, and in return, the United States issued the United States dollar, the global reserve currency. Everyone was happy, the world was turning, the economies were growing globally, we had world peace to an extent, and everything was working fine. Well, then in the late 60s, the Vietnam War kicked off, and essentially America ran out of money. And they're like, hang on a second, we don't have enough money to run this war. So President Nixon comes on the camera and goes, we are temporarily delinking the US dollar from the gold that you gave us.
Temporarily.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right, temporarily. Now, 54 years later, it's still temporarily delinked. So America did the ultimate bait and switch. They said, hey, you can trust us, give us your gold, and we promise we'll always back it 1-to-1. And then in 1971, they said, gotcha, you're not getting your gold back, and we'll pretend that we're only doing this temporarily. Well, of course, 50 years later, it's like, gotcha, it's still temporarily delinked. From that point, Angelo, America, and again, all nations are doing this to an extent, they kept printing money out of thin air. So for everyone out there, if you believe that your dollar, your euro, your rupee, your ruble, your yuan, your RMB, anything, you believe, many people believe there's a magical, mythical cave of gold where all of your money is backed by this gold. There is no gold. And if there is gold, it's not backing your currency. It's in someone's vault, not your vault, not your nation's vault. Most of it is in the US vault. And of course, China's buying it back a lot and Russia's trying to get a lot and they're mining more of it. But the point that we think here is that gold does not back the dollar and no currency is backed by gold. So the currency that we use in the world at the moment is backed by nothing. It's backed by a war machine. It's backed by belief. It's backed by faith. It's backed by a story. Now we move even further and we say, okay, we keep printing this money out of thin air. And that is called inflation. In pure economic terms, inflation is inflation of the money supply. The money supply gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But what we believe in mainstream, the financially illiterate, which is most people, not because they're bad, but because they have been purposely denied an education in what money is. Many people believe that inflation means prices going up. That's not inflation. In economic theory, inflation is inflation of the money supply. The consequence of the money supply going up is that prices go up. Why? Because we're diluting the money supply, which reduces your purchasing power. A reduction of your purchasing power means you need more money for the same goods. So the consequence of inflation is prices go up. But what we've been told in society is, no, it's your fault for inflation because you bought a cup of coffee, because you went shopping too much, because you spent too much money. Spending money does not cause inflation. Spending money does not inflate the money supply. If I buy a cup of coffee at the shop, it doesn't increase the money supply. It creates commerce. It creates jobs. It's economic stimulus. The only thing that inflates the money supply is inflation of the money supply. And the only thing that can inflate the money supply are central banks. But this is where it gets a little bit tricky, Angelo. Governments say, well, we didn't inflate the money supply. It was the banks. And the banks say, well, we were only doing what the government told us to do, and the government told us to create more money. So now we move on to the creation of money. And don't worry, it will link to stable coins. And we have to lay out this foundation to understand how stable coins were good, they were pure, but now they're going to be hijacked by the US government. And we'll get to how that's going to be done. Okay, so where does money come from? What happens now is the government runs out of money. And again, this isn't just the US government. This is pretty much all governments globally. So they write a thing called a treasury note or a bond. And what's that? It's essentially an IOU. So the government they need money. So what do? In the first instance, they tax their people. But that's still not enough money to service everything they're doing because they spend too much and they spend it irresponsibly and they go to wars and they waste money. So they're like, well, where are we going to get this money from? Well, we can't get it from gold because that takes too much effort and we gave all our gold to America. And we can't get it from diamonds because that's not really a real market. And we can't get it from labor in the sense that we've already taxed our people and governments don't grow potatoes and fruit and make money themselves. Governments don't make money, they take money. So how do they print money out of thin air? And to be clear, when governments are printing money out of thin air, that's not making money, that's taking money. And the reason why it's taking money is because it's diluting the money supply, therefore stealing the money or money's value in existence. The more they inflate the money supply, what was really created, what was real value has now been shrunk to the extent that it's not worth as much. So inflation or money printing is an invisible and brutal form of tax. It's taking people's value. And the way they do this is they write a bond, also known as a treasury note or an IOU. In the first instance, the treasury issues these treasury notes or bonds or IOUs. We'll keep it all one and the same. There are slight differences, but to be simple. And they say, hey, world, here's an IOU or a bond. Who wants to buy this off me? Now, in the past, lots of people, we'll stick with America for now because that's where we're going to. Lots of people sort of, hey, well, I've got all these American dollars because I built all this stuff. We'll go with China and America as an example. So China builds all of this stuff. They sell it to America and America pays for it with American dollars. Then America runs out of money and they're like, well, how are we going to get those American dollars back because we need them? I know, I'll write an IOU. Hey, world, does anyone want to buy this IOU? And China, in this example, goes, well, we've got lots of money because we just sold you lots of stuff. So why would I give you this money back? And America says, well, if you give me back that money, I'll give you this piece of paper and I'll give you, as an example, 5% per annum every year for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. You have 2-year bonds, 5-year bonds, 10-year bonds. And we'll go with a 10-year bond as an example. So China, you give us $1 trillion and we'll give you 5% per annum for the next 10 years. And at the end of the 10 years, we'll give you back your $1 trillion. Now, that's a pretty good deal. And many people for many years were taking this deal. They're like, all right, we've got lots of American dollars. There's nothing we're doing with them. So here you go, America. Here's your money back. You give us that IOU or that bond, and you also give us 5% per annum a year on what we gave you. And at the end of the 10 years, you give us all of our money back. Now, we've been playing this game for many years. But here's the thing. The interest on that bond, where do they get that interest from? Well, there's not enough money in the world. So they make another IOU to get more money to pay back money that never existed in the first place. So what's happening is the money supply gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the debt gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the inflation rate, particularly for the world, but in this instance, for the first instance for America, the inflation gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So prices are going up, the debt is going up, the American people are hurting, the dollar is losing its value. And then it gets to a point, Angelo, where America goes, hey, who wants to buy this bond? And the whole world, and this really happened, this isn't theory, this really happened. The whole world said, well, I'm not buying that bond. And America goes, why? And it's like, well, first of all, your dollar keeps going down in value. I have to produce real stuff for your fake money. Your yield, your interest rate that you're giving me back, the returns, is not meeting what the free market is meeting, and it's not meeting your inflation rate. So even if you're paying me 5%, the hurdle rate is really about 10%. So I'm actually losing money, and I can use this money elsewhere, and there are better offers out there. And the icing on the cake, Angelo, is as we saw with the Russia and Ukraine conflict. Now, whether it's good or bad or right or wrong, that's completely irrelevant in what we're talking about here. When conflict kicked off in Russia, a sovereign nation did something to another sovereign nation, America stepped in and said, right, we're cutting you out of the SWIFT network. We're cutting you out of the financial system. We're calling all of your rich oligarchs bad. Therefore, we're confiscating their money. We're confiscating their yachts. And then the whole world said, man, if we upset America, there's no court case. There's no discussion. There's no appeal. They're going to cut us out of the financial system. They're going to rob our bank accounts. They're going to take all of our money. So now the whole world is like, well, hang on a second. You're issuing fake bonds or IOUs for real value. You're giving me fake money in return. And if I upset you, you're just going to steal from me. I don't like this deal. So we got to this point where America says, hey, we got another bond. Who wants to buy this bond? And everyone's like, I'm not buying it. I'm not touching it. So what do then? Well, the Federal Reserve in America, which is neither a federal entity nor has reserves of anything. I mean, it's just crazy. No matter how many times I explain it. The Federal Reserve in America prints money out of thin air. So America lends money to itself. Now, again, I emphasize all nations do this. We're just talking about America now because, one, America is the top of the pyramid. It's the top of the Ponzi scheme. It's the biggest economy in the world. They own the Federal Reserve. They have the global reserve currency, and now they're hijacking stable coins. But I emphasize the euro does this, the Australian dollar does this, the New Zealand dollar does it. All currency, all fiats do this. Yes. But America is at the top of this. So for every nation out there, this is not picking on America. And for all of us nations out there, we are not immune from this. We are doing the same thing, just on a smaller scale. So the central bank, or the Federal Reserve, which is one and the same, they print the US dollar out of thin air and they lend it to themselves. And then America has to pay back the Federal Reserve. They have to pay them back money with interest that never existed. So now you've got the money supply inflating and inflating and inflating and inflating in America. Now, in this scheme where they are now, everything I've just described really happened over the last over the last 70 years, but primarily over the last 50 years. It really ramped up when it was delinked from gold, officially. And many argue, and I would agree, that it was never really linked to gold. They were double spending the gold anyway. But then in 1971, it was officially done. You can't get your gold back, and we're just going to print to no limit, and we're just going to issue bonds out of thin air to print money out of thin air. All fiat always fails, and we're nearly at that tipping point now. When America prints money and lends it to itself, the first people that are hit hardest are the people of the United States, because they absorb all of that inflation. So, enter the stablecoin. Now the stablecoin comes into this whole situation. In this, before the stablecoin, when governments printed money, when America printed money, it had to lend it to itself and pay back itself with yield on top of it. Now that we have stable coins, in the past, a stable coin had to be backed by a dollar. And some of these stablecoin companies did have treasuries, but there was no law saying that these bonds or these treasuries had to back their dollar. In fact, it was a grey area. It was not clear if a treasury really backed a dollar or a dollar backed a treasury. But under the Genius Act, this is the tipping point. This is the whole changing point. The Genius Act was sold to us as if, hey, we recognize crypto, stable coins are good, stable coins we acknowledge, and stable coins are accepted within our economy. Now, in the first instance, people were saying, well, hang on, doesn't that mean that the stable coin is competing with the dollar now? And it's like, no. The stable coin now extends the life of the dollar. And the reason why it extends the life of the dollar, if we think of Tether as an example, the United States now can go to Tether and say, instead of going to the Federal Reserve, instead of going, hey, Federal Reserve, can I have $1 billion for a treasury? Now the United States dollar can bypass the treasury. Donald Trump doesn't need to work with Jerome Powell. Donald Trump can now go to Tether or Circle or other banks, other stablecoin issuers, and eventually they're going to make their own stablecoin, and they can say, hey, Tether, can you print me $1 billion? And Tether will go, well, only if you accept a treasury as backing that dollar. And the United States government goes, yeah, we've just changed the law to say that the Genius Act will now enable a stable coin to be backed by a treasury. So as I said, in the past, a dollar or a stable coin was backed by a dollar, but now it's done a 180. Now, instead of a stable coin being backed by a dollar is backed by a stable coin, which is backed by a treasury. It is utter madness. And this is where the scam kicks in. So you might be saying, well, hang on a second. Why on earth would America want to do this and not just use the Federal Reserve? Well, a few reasons. First of all, the United States government can't tell the Federal Reserve what to do. We've seen this over and over again, that Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, and Donald Trump have had a lot of friction with each other. Now, Donald Trump is doing the right thing. He's trying to reduce the interest rate because he has to pay back, not because it's Donald Trump, but because he's the head of the United States government. He has to pay back $37 trillion worth of debt with, as an example, 5% interest. And if he can get that interest down to 2%, that's a big saving on the debt payments. The same as you and I, if we've got a home loan, a 2% repayment is a much lower repayment than a 5% repayment. But when you've got $37 trillion worth of debt, you want to get that interest rate down. But Jerome Powell is saying, no, Trump, you can't tell me what to do. And Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, is right. The President of the United States cannot tell the Federal Reserve what to do. That's the law that they made up in the 30s. So what Trump has now done, and Scott Bessent, they're like, well, hang on a second. We can cut the Fed out of this altogether. We don't need to borrow money from the Fed. We can actually borrow money from the stablecoin companies. And the stablecoin companies can print money out of thin air. But this is where it gets quite genius, hence the name of the Genius Act. What they can do now is, instead of all of that inflation, all of that price rise, when you print too much money, the money supply inflates and your people's prices go up really, really quickly and really, really hard, really fast. Look at Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and so forth. Again, all nations do this. But America has absorbed this for a long time because many people wanted the US dollar. But as time goes on, people don't want the US dollar for the reasons I've just explained. So what happens now is people are already using stable coins. The stable coins are already in the global economy, and many people use stable coins. So now when the United States government prints money, instead of the majority of the inflation hitting the American people, the world absorbs this inflation because the stable coins are already in the world and everyone's using this. And the truth is, it truly is genius. The way Besant and Trump have hijacked this technology to their advantage, it's not moral, but it's genius. It is absolutely genius because they can now pass this debt to you, to me, to any nation, to everyone, to individuals who don't have to, who don't even know that they are borrowing, they are absorbing US debt. And you say, well, hang on a second, how does the United States pay off its debt with these stable coins? It's not necessarily that they're not necessarily paying off the debt. It goes back to my very first example. My very first example, if you recall, I said if there's $2 million in the world and you have $1 million debt, 50% of the world's money supply is your debt. But if you can inflate the money supply to $10 million, now only 10% of the money supply is your debt. So Russia has called this out rightfully, and I'm calling it out, and many people who understand this are calling this out. America is inflating the crap out of the money supply, but instead of the majority of that inflation hitting the American people, it's now hitting the world, and the world is absorbing America's debt. And it gets even more genius or sinister, depending how you're looking at it. As this progresses further on, my prediction is this. So this is now just my prediction. My prediction is that when treasuries are issued to Tether or Circle, they're going to say, hey, Tether or Circle, we want another $1 trillion. But instead of us paying you 4% yield on this treasury, we're going to pay you 2%. Take it or leave it. And Tether is like, well, we've only got 20 people working for us, quite literally. And if you're going to pay us $1 trillion for 2%, for typing some numbers into a keyboard, who cares? All right. Then it's going to expand quicker, and they're going to say, or even further, and going to say, hey, Circle and Tether, we want another $1 trillion, but this time we're only going to give you 1% interest. And then we'll
Adam,
say, well,
yeah,
go.
but just 1 second, just to go back to the stable coin. Basically, you had originally you had, let's say, $1 of debt that created $1 in cash, and that cash is in the economy. Now you're taking that debt to inside stable coin and you create another dollar. So in terms of mechanics, would you say that $1 of debt has created here $2 in the economy? Would I be right if I say that? You see the mechanic?
Yes, not necessarily.
Not necessarily. How would you explain that? Because I'm trying to figure, you see, that if we take, because you're backed by debt, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And originally you had $1 which is in the economy, and then you have the debt, the IOU. Now you put that debt inside Tether, which issues with that debt $1. Ultimately, that debt has put in the economy the dollar of stable coin, which is in the economy, and the other one, which was originally created the US debt. I'm trying to figure the mechanic in terms of, how much, because I have the impression that here, maybe I'm wrong, but I have the impression that ultimately it's $1 debt that has created $2 here.
Nearly. The $1 debt, let's say the interest rate is 10% to keep the number simple. So I write an IOU, a treasury or a bond. It's the same thing. It's a note saying, hey, can you lend me $1 or can you print $1? That dollar is born into existence. So that when that's only $1 now. So there was an IOU. Then we made $1.
Yes.
And then if we paid, and a 0% interest, if we pay back that IOU with $1, that's 1 for 1. It's cancelled out.
It's cancelled.
So one treasury. But you've still inflated the money supply by $1 because in the first instance, there's no money in the world. Then I write an IOU for $1. So there's no money in the world. Here's an IOU for $1. Someone prints that dollar. So there's now $1 in the world and one IOU for that dollar. When you, in this example, if a 2-year or a 5-year or 10-year bond matures, you pay back that debt and the debt is gone, but the money supply has still increased by $1. There was, in first instance, there was nothing, then there was an IOU, and then there was $1. Eventually it's paid back. There's still only $1 in the world.
Yes.
Then they do it again. Another IOU and another dollar, and they pay it back. But there's one key point you're missing there. The yield, the
Yeah,
interest.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So this is where it gets out of control because you have no money in the world, then $1. Then one treasury for $1. They print $1 and they say, okay, I'm going to pay it back. And it's like, yeah, but where's my 10% yield? and this is why it can never ever be paid back. Because
That's genius. That is genius. Absolutely.
well, this is, yeah, it's like, well, where do I get the 10 cents from? It's like, well, I'll write another IOU. Can I write an IOU for $1.10? Yes. So you write another IOU for $1.10. There's now $1.10 in the world, and they pay it back, and they say, yeah, but now you owe me another 11 cents. Well, the 11 cents doesn't exist in the world. Well, we'll write another IOU. So this is why it expands so quickly. Two parts. One, you're writing the IOU for money that never existed. So that, but then on top of that, there is interest on top of that. So you have to pay back, first of all, money that never existed with interest, and that interest never existed. And that's why it keeps expanding. Because the money never existed in the first place. There's no limit of the number of IOUs they print. But because there's interest on top of the IOU, on top of the money that never ever existed, you can never, ever, ever, ever pay back the debt. It's impossible. It's mathematically impossible.
Yeah.
Because you've created money out of thin air, but the real kicker is that you've put interest on top of that money. So this is why governments have to keep borrowing, and this is why governments are going broke. Sure, because of wars and poor spending and so forth, but at its core, it's because you have to pay back interest on money that never existed. And this is why, even if you took all of the money in the world and said, right, everyone, everywhere, everyone pay back your debts simultaneously. Go. Every home loan, every car loan, every credit card interest, every bond, every treasury, every yield. Even if we had the whole world came together and said, we all love each other, we don't want any debt, we're all going to pay it back on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Ready, set, go. You couldn't do it because the money doesn't exist. The principal could be paid back, but the interest on top of that, and of course, you have interest on top of interest on top of interest on top of interest on top of interest. The debt, that's why I said you've got $1 trillion in debt. Correction, in interest every 100 days. Hang on. The debt is increasing
days, yeah, 100 days, I think.
The debt is increasing by $1 trillion every 100 days.
Yes.
And the interest payment is $1 trillion per annum. This is just the interest, which is more than the cost of the entire
Defense.
US military.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I put my hand on my head because the numbers get so big. And even if I live in this space, I'm like, it hurts my head.
Yeah.
It hurts my head. So does that answer your question?
No, absolutely, absolutely. So
I've got to finish. Now we go
Yes.
all the way into, so it was a good question. One treasury note doesn't create $2 of debt. It creates $1 of debt plus the interest on top of it. But over many years, interest on interest on interest would absolutely, in some instances, create $2 of debt on one. Okay. So now the United States government, they're like, okay, we're going to leapfrog the Fed. We're going to leapfrog the free market because China doesn't want to buy our bonds. Russia can't buy our bonds because we cut them out of the financial system. Oops. Japan can't do it because they're in debt. Australia doesn't want to do it because their dollar's crap. The European Union doesn't do it because they don't want to do it because they don't like us and they're in debt as well. So how are we going to print more money without killing our own economy? Okay, so we're going to print money by giving the treasuries to stablecoin issuers, not banks, not you, not me, not the free market. They're just going to go straight to a stablecoin issuer and say, print me more money. And they go, well, all right. All we have to do is press some buttons on a keyboard here, and you're going to give me 5% yield on $1 trillion. Deal. The next
That's a
year,
free
America,
lunch. That's a free
yeah,
lunch. I mean, there's
it's
absolutely no risk, really.
zero risk. In
And
fact,
they're
it's the opposite. You're
they're
backed by the
investing.
US government.
Yeah, and they're investing also Bitcoin and gold, right?
Exactly,
Small.
exactly.
So they not only they're making money on the interest, but also they're investing to gold and Bitcoin. That's a small proportion. That's probably around 5% combined, right?
Well, many of these companies, of course, yes, you're right, have made a huge amount of money on investing that money. So America goes, here's a treasury, here's a yield on it, and they take that money and what do? They buy Bitcoin, they buy real estate, they buy gold, they build their business. It's free money. But the next year, America goes, well, we're only going to pay you 4%. And Tether and Circle goes, well, we don't care. We'll take 4% because it's still free money. Next year, oh, we're going to give you 3%. Okay, we don't care. 2%, oh, it's getting a bit tight. And America goes, you'll take this deal or you'll deal with the American government. And Tether goes, all right, we'll take 2%. The next year, America goes. Now, again, this is my prediction. The scenario I'm giving you now is my prediction. In the part, everything I've set up to now is fact. Now, what I'm telling you is my prediction. Then it gets to the next year and America says, now we need $10 trillion, Tether. We're only going to give you 1%. And Tether's like, with 1% on $10 trillion, it's still numbers on a keyboard. We're still backed by the US government. Who cares? All right. I would, if the US government came to me and said, hey, Adam, can you print me $2 trillion, $10 trillion out of thin air, and we'll back you by the US military and give you 1% interest on it, I'll be like, all right, I don't care. It's not like I have to go plow the fields or dig gold out of the ground. I've just got to press some numbers on this keyboard. But here's where it gets sinister. Then the US government, again, my prediction, is going to say, well, why do we even need the stablecoin company? Why don't we just make our own stablecoin? It's only numbers on a keyboard. We're the United States government. We've got the military. We've got all of these people. We've got all these public servants. Why don't we just make a stablecoin? The US government stablecoin. We don't need the Fed. We don't need the banks. We don't need other people. We don't need Tether. We don't need Circle. We'll just print a stablecoin. And in my prediction, that's what's going to happen. Because why not? Why wouldn't you just make your own stablecoin? It's not difficult to do. Then the last piece of the puzzle is this. When that debt gets too much, all of these stablecoins are one flick of a switch away. Flick. And they're now CBDCs, a central bank digital currency equivalent. Now, someone said, Adam, it's not a central bank. It doesn't matter. The technology is identical. Whether you want to call it a ping pong ball or a central bank digital currency, the thing is identical. It is programmable money that at any time the American government can go, yeah, we don't like what Italy's doing. All those stable coins in Italy, flick, they're now burnt. Yeah, we don't like what Adam Stokes is doing. All of the stable coins in Adam's wallet, flick, they're now burnt to an oblivion. Yeah, we don't like what Russia's doing, so we're not going to let those stablecoins come out of the economy. Flick. So now, instead of the CBDCs that we've been worried about, where central governments are just controlling CBDCs in their own nation, this model, this genius model, truly is genius. Evil, but genius. They've got all the currency, programmable money on planet Earth. They don't need to negotiate with governments. They don't need to go to banks. They don't need to do anything. They can literally go, yeah, there's a bit too much money in that country. We're just going to burn that currency. Boom, gone, invisible. And so where's all these tethers that were in my wallet? So they're gone. What do you mean they're gone? Hey, it's programmable money. You can just burn it straight away. So that's the history of money. I've been talking for 40 minutes, sorry. That's the history of money. That's where we're going. And that's why I really want to emphasize. It's not that stable coins are bad. They're not bad. But the way they've been hijacked is both evil and genius.
Just one thing. So basically the stable coins also, it's not only a US thing. This is international. Stable coins are used for people that want to be in the crypto ecosystem. So whenever, let's say, I sell my Bitcoin temporarily, it's a buffer stock of crypto, which is translated into stable coin. And this, we have it all around the world because also a lot of people use those stable coins to trade. And to also people that are not, they don't have bank accounts. I'm talking about the people in the global south. And so basically they could have a CBDC on a global scale. This is not only the US,
Of
right?
course, they're already global, and that's the key issue. That's the key point there. Stable coins are already global. This is why it's so powerful, because stable coins have spread everywhere globally already, and then they flick the switch. It's not like the US dollar exported its currency for this to happen. The currency was already exported. The currency was already in circulation. The demand on stable coins was already in circulation. And that's why I use the term hijacking. They've hijacked. It was already in operation. People were happy with it. It was operating. And the American government said, that looks pretty good to us. We'll take it. But there is the one thing I must sort of correct you on there. As an example, in Australia, when I sell my crypto in Australia on an Australian exchange, I don't need to sell into a stable coin.
Okay.
I can choose to sell into a stable
That's
coin,
fair.
but I don't have to. So if you're in, and there's European exchanges, and here's the thing. This is a message to the world. If you are a global leader listening to this, which I doubt you are, but if you're listening to this, this is why, world, you need to embrace crypto right now. If you try to stop crypto right now, you're in a huge disadvantage to yourself. And the reason is because exactly what you just said, Angelo. If as an example, I'm in Australia. So in Australia, I can sell my Bitcoin directly for Australian dollars. The American dollar is not involved whatsoever. But that's because Australia allows me to use Australian exchanges in Australia. If you have a nation, to be blunt, to be so stupid to say, we're not allowing crypto, we're not allowing Bitcoin, what happens is then what you've just described. The people in those nations, when they sell their Bitcoin or sell their Ethereum or sell their XRP or sell their name your coin, if their country has said, we don't allow Bitcoin or crypto here, then those countries are forced to sell into stable coins. They're forced to sell into another currency that is not their own currency. And then it helps America. And this is why it gets so deep, because all nations now, you need to embrace Bitcoin immediately. Like, if I was the leader of any nation anywhere, I would be calling all of my lead financial treasury leaders and politicians together and said, right, all of our difference aside, left or right, male, female, gay, straight, black, white, none of that matters right now. What matters is fiat is collapsing. The dollar is also collapsing. They are extending the life of the dollar. That is expanding the dollar dominance around the world, which is putting more pressure on our currency. As the dollar expands very quickly and gets stronger and stronger at a rate faster than it's been doing, it is suppressing the euro, the Australian dollar, the Chinese yuan, the RMB, the ruble, the rupee. Everything is collapsing compared to the US dollar. Now, to be clear, all fiats are failing. They're all collapsing. It's just that the top of the sinking ship, the bridge or the stack, as this ship of fiat goes down, is the US dollar. And what the US has now done is that they've extended the ship that's sinking a little bit higher. And what's going to happen is everyone's going to be scrambling as the ship sinks. They're going to be climbing to the top of the fiat sinking ship, and the top of the fiat sinking ship is the US dollar. So a message to every nation out here: if you care about your currency, if you care about your economy, if you care about your people, if you care about yourself, you must embrace Bitcoin immediately. You must move right now, because all fiat everywhere is failing. All fiats are going to collapse much quicker now compared to the US dollar. The US dollar is still eventually going down because all fiats will always fail. But every fiat currency in the world is in a world of hurt, and they must move quickly to Bitcoin to save themselves.
So how do you see the strategy of the US when it comes to Bitcoin and gold? The US has a very large stock of gold, which is valued at a very low price. Could there be a revaluation of that gold? And how do you see them playing? I see Tether. My question is, when I see Tether investing into both gold and Bitcoin, is the strategy, I would say the hedging strategy, the escape strategy for the US, to have a combination of gold and Bitcoin? How do you see going forward? We saw the debt, and the debt can be solved through stablecoin, and maybe you will tell me maybe a debasement of the debt. That's what the Russians are thinking about.
Yes. Yep.
How do you see the role of Bitcoin and gold, and also in the context that you have this multipolar world where you have lots of countries that are hedging their bets by buying gold.
So, number one, they have to deflate the debt, as we described. So they're going to, or I should say, inflate away the debt so it becomes
Yeah.
smaller as a percentage. So that's step one. Concurrently, in the background, America made its first move with gold back in the Bretton Woods Convention. They made a great move with gold years ago. I mean, it was the ultimate genius act back then. They said to the world, hey, world, you give us your gold and we'll give you this note. But now what they're saying is saying, hey, world, you give us your labor and your effort and your value and your trust, and we'll give you this stable coin. It's the exact same play, but it's in the digital form. So step one, they've already got crap loads of gold. How much? I don't know. Not even they know. If you remember, or maybe they do know, but if you remember Trump and Elon Musk, they said, let's audit Fort Knox. How much gold is in Fort Knox? They don't know. We don't know how much gold is in the world. Now, for everyone out there who loves gold and hates Bitcoin, let's put that hate aside for a second and let's just realize that we both have the same belief and understanding that fiat is the scam. Now, whether you believe Bitcoin's a scam or gold's a scam, as in, has gold been double spent? Has it been diluted? Is there more gold than we realize? Has everyone stole it? Is it at the bottom of the ocean? Are they going to find more? Is there a bigger supply? That's irrelevant for this discussion. What's relevant is that fiat is failing and people and economies need to move to a hard asset. Now, many people say, well, no, it's only a yellow rock. A yellow rock is the only thing I can move to. Other people are realizing, in fact, no, Bitcoin is the better gold because we know the supply, we can audit it. It's much more portable, it's much more divisible, it's much more transparent, and it's clearly becoming much more desired. It's done when those pizzas were bought, as an example, those two pizzas years ago, it's done around 5 billion% in 16 years. 5 billion% increase in 16 years. That is the best performing asset in the history of all mankind. And it's still going up. It's not slowing down. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's at the 7th or 8th, it keeps flipping between silver and Amazon and itself. The 7th biggest market cap on planet Earth of anything, bigger than any bank, bigger than any oil company, bigger than any car manufacturer. It's done that in 16 years without any office, without any CEO, without any board of directors. It's done it purely organically, and it's coming for gold very quickly. So nations are saying, okay, so to answer your question, the United States is like, right, what do we do? Okay, so we got crap loads of gold after the Bretton Woods Convention. We tricked the world with that. We're now tricking the world with using our stable coins. So what do we need? We need Bitcoin. We've got lots of gold. We'll take more gold. We'll mine more gold. And if there's wars, we'll steal more gold. But how do we get Bitcoin? I can't get more Bitcoin through bombs and bullets, because even if I did, even if you come into my house and you murder me for my Bitcoin, well, then the Bitcoin's gone, because it's not like a block of gold that's sitting in my safe. So in my mind, America is now getting so much. Step one, they're extending the life of the dollar. And they're extending the life of the dollar by concurrently inflating the money supply, therefore deflating their debt, inflating away the debt. So that's all happening simultaneously. In the background, they've already got huge reserves of gold. And sure, they'll get more, as I described, whether they buy it, rob it, mine it, or so forth. But the real question for everyone is, how do they get more Bitcoin? How do they get more Bitcoin? And my opinion is this. The biggest exchange in the United States is Coinbase. And Coinbase holds a crap load of Bitcoin. And in my mind, they're going to do what they did to the American citizens in, I think it was 1913. American government confiscated America's gold, its own gold. They said to all the American people, it's illegal for you to hold gold. We're going to give you, I think it was $30 US per troy ounce. And if we catch you with gold, we'll put you in jail. So all the American people surrendered their gold. Now, this is the theory with the digital gold of Bitcoin. Coinbase is a centralized honeypot for all the Bitcoin in America. And some believe, and again, it's just a belief, we can't substantiate it, only time will tell, that it'll get to a point and America's going to do that again. They're going to go to their own people and they're going to go to Coinbase and they say, Coinbase, We allowed you to operate. We can see that you've got a honeypot there of 1 million Bitcoin. We're going to give you $50,000 per Bitcoin. And if you don't do that, we're going to put you in jail. They did it before in 1913. I believe it was 1913. Someone have to check my work. They confiscated the American citizens' gold and gave them a shit price for that gold. And then as soon as they confiscated that gold, they allowed the gold price to go up. They're more than likely going to do the exact same thing with Bitcoin that's held on Coinbase. And you may have seen recently that BNB is going up very quickly. There is rumor that the Trump administration is working with Binance and CZ and making it very attractive and very friendly for the American government and Binance to work together. Now, maybe it's because Binance has got good technology, or maybe because Binance is the biggest exchange on planet Earth, and Binance has huge holdings of Bitcoin. So maybe, just as Coinbase is a massive honeypot for Bitcoin, maybe, and they're going to confiscate that Bitcoin and give a crap price to the people who had their Bitcoin there, maybe they're also doing that with Binance. And that is why some believe, and again, it's just belief, it's speculation, maybe the reason why the BNB is doing so well isn't just because Binance is a good product and the coin has utility. That definitely plays into it. But there are negotiations and talks between the US government and Binance. Well, what's happening behind those closed doors? In my opinion, there's a big honeypot of gold there, digital gold, that they want to get their hands on. So they've already said that they're not going to buy more Bitcoin. They're going to take it from proceeds of crime. Crimes might change to say, well, if you speak up against the American government, perhaps that's a crime, therefore your Bitcoin's confiscated. Maybe it's for national security and the national good of the country that they confiscate your gold, just as they confiscate your digital gold, your Bitcoin. So they get it from Coinbase. They get it from proceeds of crime. Maybe they get it from Binance. Maybe they get it when they conquer nations, but they can't put it on ships like you can with gold. It's more difficult to obtain the Bitcoin. They can't mine it faster like you can mine gold faster. So it's some scary times, Angelo. The way I see it is that they're positioning themselves to confiscate the Bitcoin because they've already said they're not going to buy it. And if there's big honeypots there, they've done it before, why wouldn't they do it again?
Absolutely. I have the same thinking. The gold was confiscated. I think it was in 1930s, was Roosevelt, I think. But it was overnight. Overnight, they confiscated the gold.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised. Because this is national security. It's they can invoke whatever they want just to confiscate that, and they've done it before. But I would say, well, what I mean, are you checking? Is it correct? It was Roosevelt that.
It was 1933. On April 5, 1933.
Yeah. So how do you see now? That's for the U.S. But then, what is the strategy now when it comes to BRICS? BRICS is they're starting to trade within. They have some clearing systems between themselves. They start their own bank, and they are accumulating gold. So, how do you see the collective West being in this U.S. ecosystem and BRICS working together? How do you see this new world order?
So all fiat always fails, and all fiat typically has about a 50-year lifespan. And the US dollar is really at the 55-year mark. Now, some people say, no, the US dollar was made much earlier. No, the US dollar really became a fiat in 71 when Nixon delinked it from gold. So that was the real start point, because then it was official. We are temporarily delinking gold, US dollar, from the gold standard. That's when the clock started. Historically, fiats last about 50 years. We're now up to 55 years. It's due to collapse. And it's happening right now. Next part. The world is pissed off at the United States. Why? Because the United States prints fake money and people create real stuff for fake money. Now, we've all been playing into it. It's not that like they made us do it. China's been producing all of this stuff. America prints money. America creates money. China produces stuff, and they do an exchange. I'll give you the global reserve and you give me your production. Cool. Now we've been playing that for years. And it's like, yeah, but now your dollar's worth crap. We don't trust you. You keep baiting and switching us. You keep printing this to an oblivion. Your yields are horrible. And if we upset you, you're going to cut us out of the global financial system. Hence the rise of BRICS. Because BRICS said, well, screw you, America. We don't like this deal. Why do we have to work very hard when all you have to do is print money and get fat, dumb, and happy? And if we annoy you, you're going to bomb the shit out of us. And if you don't bomb us, you're just going to cut us out of the SWIFT network. So it's a perfectly natural reaction that the world has said, enough. We're not doing this anymore. So you now have Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and about 20 to 30 other nations. Many other nations are rightfully saying, well, hang on, we don't like this deal anymore. Let's make our own currency. and I laugh because we're now back to square one. So I'll start with this. BRICS will never work. It will never, ever, ever work. Why? Because if we couldn't trust one nation to put gold into a basket and then not break the deal, what hope in hell do we as humanity have to trust Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and add another 30 nations? Well, we couldn't trust one nation to centralize the gold, but now we can trust 30 nations to centralize the gold. Now, to be clear, BRICS is backed by the claim is that it's not that the BRICS currency is not just backed by gold, it's backed by a basket of goods. And it's like, well, that makes it even more complicated, doesn't it? Because now you've got 30 nations with multiple things backing it. How are you going to audit this? If America doesn't know how much gold they've got, hang on, I'll go back a step. If the world doesn't know how much gold it's got, we don't know how much is in circulation, we don't know how much is in the ground, we don't know how much there's going to be in the future. So we don't know how much gold there is. We've got no idea. We think there's about 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools of gold that we've pulled out of the ground. And we think maybe there's another 1 Olympic-sized swimming pool of gold in the ground. But what if there's 10 more Olympic-sized swimming pools of gold in the ground? Well, suddenly gold loses its value because you've increased the supply. But equally, if people aren't demanding it, maybe it really loses its value. And this is why Bitcoin's a better gold, because we know the supply. We know how much has been mined. We know how much will be mined, and we know that no one can control it. No one can hack it. No one can print more. No one can mine more. The rate is set. So we go back to BRICS. The reason why BRICS won't work is because we're going to go back to square one. We're going to get all the gold in the world, as an example. We're going to centralize it in a vault. Whose vault? I don't know. Everyone's vault. We're not going to be able to audit it, and then we're going to write a note against the gold. And then we're right back to square one. We're right back to what we keep doing over and over again in humanity. Gold is valuable, but it's too heavy, it's too slow, it's too cumbersome. So let's put the gold in a vault. You can trust us, mate. She'll be right. And then we'll write a note against the gold, and we'll live happily ever after. Well, of course, then they're going to double spend the gold. They're going to write 2 notes, 3 notes, 4 notes, 5 notes. And eventually war's going to kick off. And they're going to say, well, we've run out of money, so let's delink the gold temporarily. and then when the money machine starts printing again. But this time, instead of it being one nation, you've got 30 nations doing it. So BRICS is a great theory. It makes sense to say, screw you, America. We're going our own way. But it will never, ever work. Because humans, and this is where I bring us back to humanity, humans can't be trusted. It's not because of our color, our gender, our race, our language. No, we're all people, we're all the same. And when we're given absolute power, it will be corrupted absolutely. And if we can get a little bit ahead and no one's looking, we'll go for it. Whether you're America, Russia, China, and we've seen it over and over again, all empires eventually fail, primarily because of greed and bad financial management. The Dutch Empire, the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, the French Empire, the British Empire, the Spanish Empire, they all eventually collapsed because of poor financial management. And we keep seeing it happening over and over again. Hence, we move to Bitcoin. I don't trust you. You don't trust me. We don't trust them, and they don't trust us. So what's the answer? Just remove the trust. And how do we do that? Well, we do that with Bitcoin. So it comes to this. All fiat always fails. That is a fact. If one nation can't do it, 30 nations can't do it together. If people can't be trusted, we need a trustless money. And the reason why Bitcoin will save us is because we've never had this technology before. And for those who think, oh, this can't work, it's the same as if 200 years ago I said, Imagine we were 200 years in the past, and I said, Angelo, in the future, there's going to be these big metal tubes that are flying through the air at 800 kilometers an hour, 30,000 feet in the air, moving hundreds of people from this nation to that nation. They'd say, you're insane. We're going to put you in a mental asylum. That's a scam. But of course, we're talking about the aeroplane, and the aeroplane is moving thousands of people every second around the world at 30,000 feet at 800 kilometers an hour. That we can do that, and very safely, because we have the technology to do it. The reason why Bitcoin will work is because now we have the technology. The Bitcoin network. Bitcoin is a symphony of countless technologies and the evolution of humanity to get to the point where we went from cavemen rubbing two sticks together to make fire to putting people in rockets and sending them into to other nations. That being, you look at Mars may be colonized at one point. We may or may not have put men on the moon, but we've definitely put men into orbit outer space. And that's because we've put so many different technologies together where now you and I, we're essentially running a television network from our offices with the ability to communicate to millions of people around the world simultaneously because of the power of the internet. All of these technologies are now coming together in a symphony to create the best money humanity has ever known. Most people don't understand Bitcoin because they don't understand money, and they don't think it's possible that Bitcoin could be so perfect because they don't understand that we now have this symphony of technologies that bring it all together that enable the perfect money to exist.
Adam, I have to say this has been probably my most interesting live stream. I'm not. I've been absorbing every single word, and I'd like to really to thank you for joining me today. And I have to say you are very gifted to explain complex subject into very simple terms, and I think people would like to know how can they follow you. You have a Twitter account, you have a YouTube account. Can you tell people how they can follow you? And by the way, I put on the description all your links of YouTube channels and Twitter. Can you just
First of all, thank you for your very kind words, and thank you for the work you're doing. We must talk, we must seek truth, and you play a very important part in what's happening around the world. We are seeking a money of peace, and I thank you for inviting me onto the channel and seeking the truth. The truth is in the market. So for those of you who haven't met me, my name is Adam Stokes. Come join me on the Adam Stokes channel. Debate is always welcome. We explore ideas. I have a live show every Wednesday and Sunday night, Australian Sydney time. I'm also available on X on Adam_Stokesy, Adam_Stokesy. I run a safe website where everyone can get into crypto safely with products that I trust on thecrypto.land. That's www.thecrypto.land. And if you want to learn a little bit about trading, buy my book, 28 Pro Trader Tips, The Art of Trading.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you. And I hope to see you very soon again on the next, in the near future.
Grazie.
Grazie.